Today I'm sharing with you how to make this expandable portfolio. I made this project for Susanna for her birthday on October 22nd. It's really a fun project. The construction of it is simple, but the decorating is what takes the most time. The outside looks rather plain, but when you unwrap this string closure and open the portfolio, you see that it's filled with pockets and full of bling. I'm going to show you the basic construction today. You'll begin with an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of cardstock. This is going to be the section that forms the flap for the portfolio. And you'll score this at 4 1/4 and 8 1/2. I have an old score pal, so in order to make the portfolio a little more flexible to hold thicker elements, I'm going to make a few more score lines, and to do that I'm going to use this notched mark next to the 7 and also that 7 1/2 inch groove. So I'm moving the 4 1/4 inch mark over to the 7 1/2, and then I've scored in that little triangle mark next to it. I want the flap to be able to roll around the paper tablet that's going to be inside. So I'm lining up the 8 1/2 inch mark with that notch and then scoring in the notch next to it. And I repeat that several times so that I have 4 adjacent lines here to create that roll flap. On the inside of this piece, I've placed a long strip of tape. This will be the bottom of the pocket, so that's ready to be adhered. And I've also used my crocodile to punch a hole in the center of the flap. This is where the circle and thread closure will be. I have a 3/4 inch circle and a 1 inch circle with a brad. So I'm going to go ahead and put those through that opening and open those prongs. You could use an eyelet. In fact, on the one I made for Susanna, I did use an eyelet, but I really think that a brad is probably better because it's less likely to pull through. And in the finished portfolio, I put a decorative piece of cardstock and designer paper there to cover up the mechanics of that closure. The next piece of cardstock is also 8 1/2 by 11, and in landscape orientation you will score it at 4 1/4 and 8 1/2 also. This time though, you're going to move the 4 1/4 to that triangle mark and score at the 7 1/2. So if you look at these two pieces, if I line them up, you can see that one is scored to the right and the other is scored to the left of that mark. That's going to be important so that they line up when they're adhered together. For this piece, I've used washi tape on what will be the pocket flap, and I've also put washi tape on both sides of this piece. Flipping it over, you can see where that notch is that I punched with a Stampin' Up! Punch. I've also put score tape to have it ready to adhere to the other piece. So now if you just lay this piece of cardstock in a zigzag fold and take the other piece, you can lay it right in. Just slide it in as far as it will go. Make sure the edges are lined up, and then you can adhere those together. Next, we're going to work on the piece that inserts into the portfolio to hold the paper pad and pencil. To make this portion, you're going to use a 4 3/8 inch piece of cardstock. I made it just a little narrower than the portion of the portfolio that it will fit into, so that the portfolio can easily close around it. I used a word window punch more toward the left side of this piece, and I just pushed it in as far as it would go and aligned the edge of the punch with the edge of the paper, and punched once and then moved it about half the width of the opening and punched again to make an opening that's wide enough for my paper tablet to fit. Now, for the pencil, I just used a scrap of patterned paper and cut a piece of cardstock about 3/8 of an inch wider. And I left the length longer than what I know I'm going to need for this piece. It depends how big around your writing implement is, how long that piece will actually end up being. So I would recommend that you actually put your pencil or pen in place as you prepare this part of the project. This piece of paper is scored about 3/4 inch from the right hand edge, and then at this same place on the score pal, I scored and moved and scored and moved over and over again to make this portion of the paper roll a little bit. I think that for my pencil it was about 3/4 of an inch. Yours may be different. Then I used score tape on the back, but this part I don't know how long it's going to need to be, so I actually put that tape on the base cardstock. That score line that I made is going to be the guide for the top of this piece of paper. So I can remove these tape liners and put this piece into place. And now I'm going to slide my pencil in and take this piece of tape cover off so that the end will stick. I want it to be tight, but not too tight. And with that in place, then you can take this back to your paper trimmer and just cut the excess off. Returning to this portion of the portfolio right next to the flap, you're going to glue this in place, but you need to be careful how you adhere it, because you want to make sure this part here is free for the back of the tablet to slide. So make sure when you put your tape that you adhere to the top but not the bottom. So the only thing remaining now, once you have everything glued together, is to take a piece of floss or twine and wrap it around the underneath of that larger circle and tie it in a knot, and then wrap it several times around your portfolio to make the closure.